So tell us who we're with and where we are.
Yeah.
So you are with me, Eli Beke, and I'm Wedge Edge.
Yep.
And you're here in lovely Torquay at a place called Ashmore Arts, which is a artist creative collective. And yeah, you're sitting here in my studio.
Yeah. With the fire going in the background.
With the fire going in the background, yeah,
Yep.
because according to Australians it's getting cold.
Which is beautifully sunny
Yeah,
outside.
it's very sunny outside, it's nice. How long have you been here?
I've been here about a year.
Yeah.
It's been a bit over a year. It was sort of March that I moved into this space. Originally I was just sort of in this half.
Right.
And now I've expanded into the other half. And yeah, it's sort of just keep on adding and keep on growing and, you know.
And is this your first foray into full-time making?
It is. So sort of, I was sort of part-time for about 4 or 5 years, and it started off sort of maybe 1 to 2 days a week. Then it went sort of 3 days a week. And it was sort of like sitting at that. Mm-hmm. And it was sort of like, it was at that point I could make the decision to kind of breathe a bit more life into it, you know, and kind of make a bit of a jump to it, I guess, you know, where I felt a little bit assured of not falling flat on my face. But yeah, it's coming together, you know. So
What did that look like for you? What was the catalyst to that jump?
I think it was a bit of a sort of a realization. It's like where, you know, there's sort of where do I want to go with it, and having worked at it sort of part-time and seeing the growth and seeing like what I'm able to achieve, what kind of work I'm able to make, you know, for that does, you know, for what I wanted to desire to do, you know, I had to spend more time on it. And yeah, like it's just I'm a bit of an introvert, I guess, and I really just enjoy spending time, you know, just pottering about in the studio as well. So there was a big attraction to that as well, and sort of bringing about sort of the, you know, just the ideas and bringing them to fruition. And, you know, I think I definitely underestimated the amount of work that's required, you know, and I think, you know, I'm not alone being the optimist in that regard. So.
And tell everybody, what is it that you do here?
So
What do you make?
I am a wood carver, and I'm also a blacksmith as well. And I also do a little bit of joinery as well, a bit of sculpture. And, you know, I feel like I'm still in the trying everything sort of mindset of sort of working out where it is, you know, I would best like to put my kind of things, my energy.
Yeah.
So I make stuff that I sell at markets. I make stuff that I sell online. I also teach. So I do sort of spoon carving workshops and things like that. So yeah, sort of back when I was doing sort of 2 days a week, 3 days a week, that was predominantly sort of greenwood sort of spoon carving.
Right.
So starting with green timber, cutting it to length, using axes, adzes, it was all hand tool, you know. But yeah, sort of when you want to be competitive, you've got to sort of like make, you know, kind of a balance.
Yeah, you've got to think about the things that are actually saleable at profit. Because it's now your breadwinner, right?
Yeah.
Which is a whole different...
It's a different dynamic.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a different sort of, you know, way of approaching it. But it's, you know, it's also means I can spend a lot more time doing it. So, you know, that's, you know, you get, you know, it's the seesaw, isn't it? You know, like, where do you go?
Absolutely.
Like with it.
So is there a deadline for when you have to have found like a self-set deadline, when you have to have found your thing? Or are you quite happy to muddle along between all different things?
Not particularly. I haven't really set a deadline. It would probably be helpful if I did do that. But I think, you know, I'm less in the sort of the growing, expanding, adding kind of functionality or kind of new tools or anything like that. I'm more about sort of consolidating what I've got at the moment and sort of exploring that, to its sort of fullest depth, Yeah.
So you've got the stuff.
Yeah.
Now you need to make whatever. When I say stuff, I mean the tools. We now need to work out what the product line or the love is within that.
Yeah. So it's sort of like, it's been a bit sort of foundational, and like really like this studio is sort of like, it's the big work of the past year, really.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of hours put into just arranging, sorting, organising, kind of things, and getting it sort of in an efficient kind of way of, like arranging it so I can access it.
Yeah.
Put my hands on things pretty quickly, sort of thing.
It's not the normal way to do it. A lot of people that we speak to have found the thing that they love.
Yeah.
And then built the business around it.
Yep.
Are you aware of that?
Yeah. That's like, there is the spoons, and I do carve a lot of spoons still. And that's sort of the bread and butter. But yeah, like I feel the yearning towards sort of furniture. I feel sort of, the yearning towards sculpture as well. And the way that I've approached it is, sort of putting in the foundations and, making it in a way that it's almost the easiest way to sort of do it.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. I feel like I've been recalcitrant or even avoidant of doing things if I don't feel it's the most efficient way that I could do it.
Okay.
Sort of thing. Yeah. So, to my detriment probably.
I would say so,
in some ways, in some ways.
Definitely to your detriment, but I mean, I think many people do suffer from that. I know there's definitely things I've put off.
I've done it in the past. Like,
You put it off for a long time because you're like,
Yeah.
actually, if I just wait and get this thing, this will all become much easier, so I'll just do it when I've got the thing. But how do you stop that? Or are you quite comfortable that is just the way?
you just sort of, just put it in the plan, and see what happens, and, and sort of, there's no shortage of work to do.
Yeah, well,
there's no shortage.
right?
There's no shortage of things that you can do with what you've got, sort
Yeah.
of thing. So you can always kind of work away with that. But it's it just it also takes time, and I'm a bit sort of stubborn and sort of strong-headed in that I don't tend to listen to people that well. So it's sort of it takes a bit of time to kind of realise what's the best way forward as well, and kind of realising what you do and don't know.
Yeah.
I guess as well. So yeah, like I listened to a great sort of audio book called The E-Myth. Yep. Have you heard that one? Read that one?
Technician, managers, entrepreneurs.
Yeah. So that's that's sort of like, that was sort of a pretty recent sort of listening that I did of that. And yeah, it sort of like puts things into sort of context, I guess, and sort of like helps provide a model.
You loved that, didn't you?
It was a really good. I listened to it on the audiobook maybe twice. Like I've said before, I used to drive a lot for work, so I maybe listened to it maybe twice, and then I actually ended up buying the book.
Yeah, right.
And buying the book was that was the game changer.
Yeah, okay.
I'm really good at, like, I prefer to highlight things and make notes and almost study something, right?
Yep.
But that is a really, really good way of
just sort of just a good model.
It's a good model to build a business on.
Yeah.
What did you take from it? What was the key lines for you?
It was, there's a lot of resonance. I was like, oh yeah, I can see that's where the entrepreneurial kind of thing is, and that's sort of like understanding where I'm spending more time on one thing to the detriment of other sort of sides. And you kind of need that kind of big, kind of well-rounded sort of thing, and it's sort of there's Stuart. he's off on his chariot,
Nice.
going around off to work. So I think it sort of brought about there's a bit of a realization, I guess, that I'm probably spending a bit too much time in one area than on some others, sort of thing.
I think that's what we tend to do.
Yeah, definitely. It's good to realise that so early on, though.
Yeah.
But that is a superpower in itself.
That's the it's sort of everything you kind of do, it kind of adds up to a vector, where's the direction. And if you kind of got them all kind of going in one way, you're kind of pretty close to the origin, a little bit further down in time, you know. But yeah, so it's good to sort of like help identify what will help you the most and what won't, I guess. And that's sort of, I guess for most sort of creators or makers, you know, we spend a lot of time with either audiobooks or podcasts kind of in our ears and learning, you know, like while you're kind of, and that's possible depending on what you're kind of doing, I guess. You know, if I'm doing stuff that I've done before, you know, like the technician kind of work, you know, it's pretty easy going. You know, just taking that fire poker over there and running it over the wire brush. Yeah. You know, you can have something in your ears kind of thing, and you'll get a few sort of realizations hopefully, or something that'll, you know, a few gems. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the thing, you only need to pick out 2 or 3 gems over a whole audiobook, and that can be completely game changing for your business.
Absolutely.
Do you think there's a world more where you're, at the moment, where you're narrowing in on one thing, or is there a world where you amalgamate a lot of these things into your thing? Because sculpture's really good for that, being able to amalgamate multiple different mediums into one thing.
Yeah. I think you can, at the moment, it's not possible for me to spend a lot of time on sculpture.
Yeah.
So I would like, you know, to sort of build a bit more, you know, sort of things that'll sort of gain cash flow really.
Yeah.
That are able to, you know, help pay for that really and pay for those explorations.
Yeah.
You know, because it's sort of like if you're making stuff that's very niche, you know, and sculpture is incredibly niche. Yeah. You know, and it takes
it's also
a lot.
Very explorative.
Yeah.
It's very explorative, and exploration takes time.
Yeah, it does, you know, and it's not for everyone, and that's just the nature of everything as well. But you know, it's sort of like stuff that's, you know, for a larger group of people, it's more likely to, you know, pay for itself, to be able to have a bit left over to pay for other sort of things as well.
Yeah.
So I sort of feel like I'm structuring kind of my making a bit more around getting that, and it's almost it's not quite a backfilling sort of thing, but more of an adjustment to the way I kind of do my work, you know. Because for many years it's been sort of unique items. Yeah, okay. Lots and lots of unique items, you know. They're all sort of like in a genre, you know, like they're in the genre of spoon, or the you know the spatula, or the shrink pot, or the bowl. But they were all sort of unique, you know, which is a bit hard to take lots of photos of and get them online and reach audiences, and hopefully, you know, get an energy exchange.
Yeah, and you want your lower end, or obviously not lower end, but you want your initial products and your initial customer reactions to be a gateway drug to you.
Yeah.
You want someone that's, I mean, the ideal is they've maybe bought a £20-30 pot, £20-30 spoon, then they bought maybe a couple £100 cabinet, and then they come back to you and they want something else bigger or sculptural for a garden, you know. And that's certainly the wood sculpting world, chainsaw carving world seems to work like that. You know, they might have got a smaller chainsaw carving from like an agricultural show. It's maybe you know, 80, 100, £200. And then before you know it, gateway drug, and they're completely addicted, and there's multi-thousand-pound bear in their front garden. It's definitely a model that works. In a lot of ways.
Yeah, and people, you know, they're attracted to it from the joy they get. From what they, you know, because it's sort of like it's, you know, it's their hard-earned money, and it's not easy to come by. You know?
No, it's certainly not.
It's really, you know, really beautiful, you know, and I think makers, you know, like they get a lot from people, you know, when they kind of get that kind of coming back, you know, it's sort of like there's a bit of a trust there, isn't there, you know?
Definitely. There's, I set up an automatic notification on our Shopify for customers that had bought concurrent issues. So if you've bought like X and then another one comes in, and I don't use the metric for anything. I just use the metric for like, right, we're hitting the nail on the head with this customer, because it's all well and good to sell one book, one publication.
Yeah.
But by setting up this recurring thing, you're like, oh, that customer's come back, that customer's come back. And we're doing too much volume to recognise the names.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
But by setting up a notification and that notification pinging, you know that, right, we're doing something right.
What do you do with it? What do you do with that kind of information? You know,
I just look at the percentage of people that are returning versus the percentage of people that are not returning.
Yeah, okay.
And then that tells me if our product's on point or not.
Yeah, okay.
Or if our marketing's matching the product.
And do you seeing sort of a trend, upward trend?
73% of people are returned.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
That's
and
really
then
good.
A large number of them, since we introduced subscriptions in August 9 months ago, a large number of them have then become subscribers.
A lot of people forget, like their lives are so busy. So when you've been like, you know, if you subscribe, so it means you never miss a copy. It just comes in. It's like, oh, I forgot I had that. Yay! You know, it's kind of that.
It's cheaper if you subscribe. You get free shipping if you subscribe. It's all these good things by subscribing. Yeah. And the reality is, you could look at that and be like, well, I'm making less money, but actually you're not, because you have zero marketing spend on a subscriber. So by setting up notifications like that and setting up and looking at analytics in that way, you can really start to make things efficient, much in the same way you're talking about, like what's the efficient product? What's the set?
What's the efficient way to meet the people that love it? You know, it's sort of,
That's it. And what does that look like for you? Up until now, how have you done your customer outreach? Because this is quite an interesting conversation on the basis that you're so early into making this a full-time business. How have you built it to this point that then gave you the confidence to jump and do it full-time?
It's sort of direct sales. So I'll do sort of like weekend markets and stuff like that and events. So, you know, I've kind of got a bit of a stall set up, and I've got, you know, everything in the same place, everything in the boxes and stuff like that. And and it's and it all kind of comes out, and sort of I do sort of local markets at the sort of the moment, down along sort of the surf coast. So sort of like I'm at sort of Aries Inlet, Torquay, Queenscliff.
Is it a good scene for the markets around here?
It is. It is. So I think markets have always been sort of like a lower cost in terms of monetary costs way of getting out there and just showing your product, showing your stuff, you know, and getting feedback, you know, because
it's two-way, isn't it?
You know, It's like, you know, if you're actually willing to listen, you know, like people will just tell you straight out, you know, whether it's they pick it up and go, oh, you know, put it down, or it's, you know, like, and, you know, you get sort of stories as well, you know, so you get this like beautiful sort of engagement with people where they'll talk about like their relative who works timber or their father who used to work timber, and they've got so many pieces made by them, you know, that's all sort of beautiful and means so much to them. And, you know, like it's a lot easier to be genuine, and it doesn't take a huge kind of, I think, like a jump in skill set as opposed to sort of online marketing or online kind of, you know, like meeting sort of people. That's Belle. And because we're all sort of skilled with kind of interacting face to face with sort of people. And there's a slight sort of difference in kind of being in the market kind of thing. And it's also quite sort of accepted as sort of a browsing sort of thing. Like it's a pretty low stress. You're not kind of out there kind of like trying to be the door-to-door spoon salesman. You know, stuff like that.
People come to you.
They come to you and they're having a chat, and they're, you know, like it's on the weekend, so they're usually pretty relaxed and pretty happy. And and it's you know, and it's sort of like it's hard to measure the outcome, you know, based on that. But you get, you know, like you'll find out if you're doing things right, or you'll find out if you're doing things, you know, not as right as you could, wrong, perhaps, pretty quick. And I think sort of like, you know, the first sort of market I started with, I didn't even know canopy, just sort of like a board, you know, on 2 milk crates, with a couple of spoons on it, you know, at the local market in St Andrews, I think it was, just north of Melbourne.
St Andrews.
And it's sort of grown from there, and it's sort of like just been this little sort of trickling, hopefully exponential.
Yeah, that'll come at one point.
Sort of thing, you know.
So is the market more beneficial to you as a maker, or in your opinion for makers, as a research tool than it is an actual sales tool?
It should be sort of both. It should fit both. You know, like I you know, pay the rent using the sales from the markets, as well as sort of you know, giving people awareness of what it is that I do and what it is that I can, you know, do for them. Yeah. Whether that's also sort of stuff further down the road. You know, people take my card and they'll hold on to it, you know, 2 years, 3 years sometimes. And, you know, like if I closed up shop and, you know, just given up on it, then, you know, I wouldn't be there for them when it was available. So it seems to be, it kind of sets things up in a way that it's hard to measure the immediate impact just from, all right, this is the sales I got. You know, is that bad or is it good? It's like, well, you might get a call next week, you might get a call in a month, you know, and it's hard to know. And you kind of like, it's a really sort of bit of a tenuous space to be in some ways, because you're not certain, you know, and you've got to kind of like live with a bit of that uncertainty of where do you know, how do you know, and I guess there are kind of, you can put boundaries on it, like you were talking about earlier, like when do you decide, you know, you've gotten what you wanted to do or where you wanted to be. Yeah, so it all sort of feeds into, I guess, the strategy. And I think if you're able to sort of like be open and sort of just be kind of judgmental of people, because like they're not there to, you know, to give you grief or anything like that. You're not there to do that either. But, you know, it's sort of like they're gonna say what they really think, whether it's with their body language, whether it's with how they act, you know, whether it's with they actually just come up to you and, you know, kind of slap you around and say, what are you doing? You know, don't give up your day job, you know, or something like that, you know, which is what, you know, and maybe they're doing it out of the goodness of their heart, you know, but yeah, it's I don't get that very often. I do get
Not
people.
good.
No, very, very, very rarely. It's sort of like people, you know, they do ask like, oh, is this a hobby? Is this something, you know, that you're doing full time? And they're sort of like, they're a bit surprised at times, you know, because it's a really, you know, bit out of the ordinary sort of thing. I haven't really encountered many people that do sort of hand carved wooden wares at markets. I'm usually sort of the only one there that's sort of doing that kind of thing. There's a number of wood turners that sort of turn up and do that kind of stuff, but yeah, mainly it's sort of it's just me sort of thing. Lots of people that sell candles. Yeah, people love selling candles and jewellery. Yep. So maybe I need to do wooden candle things and
team up with someone that does candles and do the bases for them, right?
Collaboration.
The candles and jewellery thing's interesting because they're both other ends of the market. Jewellery takes a long time, but it's very high value. Candles don't take a long time. No discredit to candle makers, but you can knock out bigger batches of them with less
They're
effort.
also a consumable item, you know?
Yeah, exactly. So, well, there it is. So you could set up a subscription product for a candle for all you wanted. Yeah. You sit somewhere in the middle with a hand-carved spoon. Yeah. But it takes a lot of time, but it's not like a super high-value product.
It is, does that and it's not consumable either. Well, it is pretty much, like, because I use Australian hardwoods most of the time and they're really hard, they tend to last a really long time. And I think it can be a bit of a hard sell. Yeah. But for the right person, like you almost see it, you know, like if they see your stuff, see your stall, they're on the other side of the market and they just sort of like zero in on you. You know, walk straight up and they're just, you know, terribly excited and they're just sort of sorting through everything and sort of working it out. And it's, you know, and they get
buy
it.
Something?
Yeah. It's like, do you want to get, you know, and it's sort of like, like you can't force people. It's sort of like, you know, here it is, you know, it's all priced, it's all got tags, you know, you can work it out. If it's something you want to take on with your journey or not. And So yeah, like I sort of feel like it's also a bit of a new thing in terms of in relation to say ceramics. Like ceramics has as a studio practice, as a sort of like a craft or something like that. It's there's a lot of people that do it, and there's a lot of people that sort of like go out and buy ceramics sort of thing. But I think there's not that sort of like group that exists for sort of hand carved wooden things.
Yeah, I would agree.
I would agree. But I believe that will kind of shift because of the amount of people and that I've seen kind of taking up the craft of carving spoons, carving woodenware and stuff like that. It's very popular.
It's also quite an honest craft. There's no hiding. I was going to say there's no magic. There is evidently magic. There is evidently magic, but it is boiled down into a very simple thing. That doesn't mean it's easy, but it's a very simple thing. It's wood, sharp object, make thing.
And that's sort of initially what attracted me to it as well, was that it was quite easygoing with... I just need to blow my nose.
That's fine.
Maybe you can cut that out.
No, that's fine.
Or not.
That's fine.
It's up to you. Yeah, it's sort of like you don't need a lot to do it. You need sort of like not a huge amount of space. You don't need a specialised space.
Yeah.
You need, like a chopping block, an axe, maybe a saw, a nice sharp knife, and maybe a curved hook knife or a gouge. And then you can kind of like get into the craft and keep on going at it. And that's sort of like where I first started doing that, because I was doing sort of like, sort of joinery projects, and I was actually working on that bench in the shed before, and it was very cold one winter's night, and I was like, I want to do something with my hands, but it's really cold. And I remembered a video I saw of a guy carving a spoon on YouTube, and I thought, I'll go carve a spoon by the fire inside instead of being outside in the winter. Yeah, and that sort of sparked the joy a bit, because it was sort of, and I'm sure everyone like has this sort of experience where you kind of get that kind of, big kind of buzz or kind of like fireworks kind of going off.
When you find the thing.
Yeah, when you find a thing that you really sort of like get deep into flow with and stuff like that.
Or unfortunately, I think the correct statement there is if you find the thing.
Well, yeah, you got to...
I think we're all very good at it as makers and creatives at finding the thing.
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily the thing that everyone finds.
Yeah.
Everyone doesn't find their thing.
Yeah, right.
Because they're chasing this success metric.
Yeah.
They've not actually worked out what that metric is yet, right?
Yeah. It could well be. Could well be.
So with such a love for spoon carving, where it started...
Yep.
But I need to commercialise this because it's your full-time job now.
Yep.
You've obviously invested in some machinery.
Yes.
Tell us a bit about that and the why of that.
So the first sort of the birth of the sort of the spoon carving as a business was after I did a big trip overseas, and I cycled across Asia, and that was through sort of China, Japan, back to China, then Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, Myanmar, India, Nepal, then back to India. And when I was in China, I saw and experienced kind of a lot of the ramifications of mass production at a kind of a scale that doesn't really pay heed to the environment, perhaps. To some of the point that it rained sort of black one day, and I was like, covered. And yeah, it was quite
That's
quite
quite
shocking.
worrying, eh? Why is that not in the news more? That it rains black in certain countries
Yeah,
because
at
there's so
times,
much
certain
soot in the air.
times. Yeah.
Not
Well,
everyone gets to experience that.
it's not good publicity. I
No,
imagine.
well,
So,
quite, yeah.
it's like, and you know
It's a bit of a hack job, journalism job,
who pays
isn't
the
it?
news people? But you know, it was sort of like coming back from that. It was I made a bit of a thing that I wanted to be, you know, sort of green. Sort of, I swung a bit too far, I would say, from my perspective now, toward sort of a low energy, low impact sort of way of running a business, way of running sort of a thing. And where I was sort of located, it was a bit hard to sort of get into town, and I was sort of like resolved, like I'm just going to drive my car once a week, you know? And it's like, you can't compete. It's not possible. It's not possible to compete.
There needs to be a practicality in that.
There needs to be a practicality, and there needs to be sort of like a bit of a balance and a bit of, you know, sort of a change. So I wanted to sort of diversify and, you know, incorporate more sort of power tool techniques into it, because, you know, as the more sort of embodied labor you have in a piece, you know, the higher the price needs to be. You know, that's just the way of business, the way of economics. And by incorporating some sort of power tool techniques, whether that's sort of the big bandsaw that I've got over there, or, you know, using my you know, table saw, joinery, you know, the planer and stuff like that, then it's kind of, I'm able to, you know, move a bit quicker toward things. And, you know, sort of, if you're kind of entering into sort of custom work, which I do a bit of as well, you know, your pricing is going to be similar, especially if you're, you know, the client's going to multiple people for quotes.
Yeah.
So, you know, you kind of need to be sort of on a level playing field, you know, and it really depends if you're really well known, if your reputation is being traded a bit more as currency and a bit more as the process, the way that's communicated. You know, that's sort of like, that adds up to value as well. But, you know, that's sort of, not many people know about me, you know, like, and that's partly why I do sort of markets and stuff like that.
Get yourself out there.
It's just to get out there, you know, and it's sort of, you know, the more people you see and the more sort of things, and, you know, and they tell their friend who tells their friend, and, you know, and things just keep on moving on. But, yeah, sort of, it's all about balance, but it's also about sort of the materiality as well. It's pretty hard to work metal without machines, you know, like it's prohibitively too slow. You can't just spend there with a chipping kind of chisel. So yeah, like I've got, you know, all grinders, abrasive tools, and, you know, all sorts of things, and, you know, and they'll eventually kind of feed into mixing the wood, the metal, you know, the engineering side, which is what I trained with originally as well, you know, bringing it all together, you know, which is but it's sort of, it's a long journey, isn't it? You know, it's
not quick, that's for sure.
No.
But we were talking about the other day, it doesn't have to be quick. Like, it shouldn't be quick.
Yeah, absolutely. It does not have to be quick. The sort of common line of communication at the minute everywhere, certainly online, is, you know, do this, then this happens, then this happens. Nobody talks about the time delay between X, Y, and Z happening. And nobody talks about just how hard it can be. Like, someone saying, I've done this, and then this, and then this. Everyone seems to, and it's why we try and have very honest conversations in the podcast. I've done this, and then this, but what about the 10 things that failed in between?
Yeah.
So what are the 10 things that failed in between?
Well, you know, not driving the car more than once a week. That's a bit of a starry-eyed assumption, you know, sort of thing. I think, you know, the reality sort of intrudes, you know, and if you need to do sort of other work while you're doing, you know, while you're kind of building, while you're kind of like experimenting, and kind of working in between, you know, the things that you really want to be doing, you know, like that's just par for the course, you know, it's sort of what needs to be done there, sort of thing. And also kind of like working with people and working with sort of your, you know, potential customers or potential sort of clients, you know, like as there was a lot of learning there for me in terms of just how to best sort of regard it as more of a sort of, you know, kind of like a bit of a service, a bit of a kind of energy exchange.
Yeah.
A way of thinking of it in that way, not of, you know, like, you know, they're higher than me and they're buying from me lower sort of thing. It's sort of like, it's a bit of an on-par thing, and, you know, it's a win-win sort of situation, and that's what, you know, it sort of has to be. And, you know, and then pricing as well. It's sort of like, I think it's a bit easier, too easy to overprice, you know, for, you know, because, yeah, like we all have a really high regard for what we're sort of worth and what we're kind of, you know, what we are, you know, like what our kind of things are that we make, sort of thing. And, you know, sort of like my pricing hasn't really sort of shifted, but my quality's gone way up and the sort of work that I make. And, you know, it's a bit startling to sort of encounter like spoons I've carved or work I've carved 7, 8, 10 years ago or something like that. And I'm like, whoa, you know, like I don't remember this, but, you know, obviously I made it. You know? It's like, you know, and it's like, but it doesn't matter because the people that have got it, they got it because they loved it.
Yeah.
And, you know, and it's the stories that they've kind of built around it and using it. You know, it's kind of, it's part of their life. It's part of their ongoing kind of story, you know.
Yep. Yeah, you're providing in many ways, especially in the carving side, you're providing the tool, aren't you? And then it doesn't actually become the thing until it's been used a lot. Yeah. Which is like the same story for like a good leather jacket, a good set of boots, a saddle, many mugs, many dinner plates. Like, a lot of these. And that's really where the mass manufacture thing irks me, is a lot of these things are becoming part of the story of however they're used, or they're becoming part of your story, they're part of your journey. I don't mean you, I mean the customer. Certainly usable products, you know, whether it's like a custom backpack or whether that's becoming part of the story. In many ways, that's certainly in the case of a saddle or boots, that's the hero of the story.
It's like, you know, like I made it, but it's theirs.
It's
theirs.
And
it's very separate from me now.
Yep, and they're the ones that are going to really inject life into it, aren't they?
Yeah.
Which is another whole sort of.
The nice thing about handmade products, isn't it? There's more of a story there.
Yeah. So talk more about your blacksmithing side of it, because your workshop is 50-50 for the most part. Well, 33.
Yeah, it's sort of like it's sort of divided more. This is sort of the hand tool sort of area, and then sort of the metalworking kind of quarter. It's more kind of quarter. And we've got the sort of wood machine tools in one quarter of it, and we've got sort of the bench and the office and little kitchenette, you know, essential. And and then also a little photography setup, which I've just sort of slowly getting together. And the blacksmithing. So my father was a blacksmith, and he predominantly did sort of decorative ironwork. And, you know, and I actually grew up going to markets with him as well.
Okay.
You know? So getting up at sort of like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning to toddle on down. And in many ways, markets were a bit of an easier gig. Back then, there was less of them. There was a lot less of them. And, you know, I've heard that from a lot of other crafts people who have kind of been in the game a lot longer than me. That, you know, they used to pack everything up, you know, and pack all their kids in the car. They'd go to market, they'd sell out, and, you know, which is almost unheard of these days. Yeah. And then head back to their studio
to make more.
To make more. So
for the next market, which might be months away instead of weeks away, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, you know, you don't need to go to another one because they're sold out. So,
yes.
You know, that's another practicality. So because I kind of grew up doing a bit of blacksmithing with my father, and working with my hands and stuff like that. That sort of laid the seed, I guess, and also a lot of the books that he had as well, because he collected quite a number of volumes of like sort of like practical blacksmithing, or you know, there was actually, he's got one that was it was like an English Department of Agriculture kind of textbook for teaching farmers how to do like another sort of side hustle sort of thing as well.
Right, okay.
Yeah. It had like really sort of like basic sort of techniques and stuff like that. And I used to help him quite a bit as well. Like he would, you know, because I was quite small back then. So he'd take me and he'd put me in the fireplace where he was doing like a fire screen, and I'd kind of trace on the inside and stuff. So
you were a usable size.
Template. Yeah. I was just another tool in his arsenal to be deployed into the fireplace and stuff like that. And a bit of an unwilling helper as well at times, which I think is quite common, you know, as an experience of kind of like, you know, you're just you don't know what you're on about, you know, kind of dad. So I've got a few of his tools still, and he never quite got to the point of getting a power hammer as well. And part of that was because he had a home studio and it was residential. And you can't really have a power hammer in a residential area. It's sort of like, it's quite antisocial as a tool, you know, quite loud, quite noisy, and kind of shakes foundations, everything, you know, and those sorts of things. So
I was looking at Dave's 500 weight yesterday, and I'm like, they build shops around hammers like that.
They do, and that's sort of he needs to put in a lot of work to be able to run that hammer. Like I see sort of a power hammer in my future, and you know, sort of in Australia, there is like a TAFE sort of certificate you can do in blacksmithing that's in New South Wales, more around sort of railway. It's very sort of job and sort of career focused, sort of oriented. But there is kind of a bit of a thriving kind of ornamental and, you know, trade, like screens and stuff like that, kind of businesses that have kind of cropped up. As well, and there's a few sort of various kind of bodies, you know, there's sort of like there's the Victorian Blacksmiths Association, actually no, the Australian Blacksmiths Association of Victoria, which kind of gets a few people's noses out of joint actually, because they're in Victoria, but and they have a very great teaching facility, and I did a number of courses with them as well, just to sort of backfill kind of stuff that I didn't really pick up when I wasn't really, you know, listening to my dad when he was teaching me a few things, those sorts of things. Sort of incorporating sort of the blacksmithing, and because I do the timber, I'd like to really sort of join them together. And what there is a lot of is sort of the knife makers and the knife sort of forgers that kind of join sort of the wood handles and the forged blades and stuff like that. And I'm a bit more sort of drawn to doing carving tools, you know, because of that's sort of what I do. But again, you know, like talking about what's sort of holding me back from that is that I don't have, say, a furnace for doing accurate sort of tempering for treating the tools and stuff like that. So, you know, like I'm still kind of holding back until I can kind of build one of those. So
could you outsource that?
Well, yeah, you could.
Many
absolutely.
You'd have to.
I would need to make lots and stuff like that. And I have actually looked into that and tried to find sort of a local outfit in Geelong, because Geelong, you know, it's a steel city. You know, they used to.
Is that what Geelong is?
Yeah. Sort of. They have, you know, like the engine plant and stuff like that. And you know, and there was the Alcoa kind of mill. They did aluminium and stuff like that. But yeah, I hadn't found anyone sort of to be able to do that. So there's plenty of places that do sort of water jet cutting if you wanted to move more to the knife making sort of thing, which is more sort of less shaping, forging, cutting it out, grinding, processing, tempering, sharpening, fitting handles and stuff like that. So that's definitely stuff you consider.
Yeah, I definitely think it's one
sort
thing
of a go,
makers can get hung up on is weight. And I mean, there's no reason why you can't take the tempering in to your workshop at a later date, but if it's stopping you from doing a job, why not find someone that, by the way, will be fantastic at tempering something, because that's their only job.
They'll do it.
And there's this real science to that.
Absolutely.
Previous engineering practice, we used to do a fair chunk of, very specific engineered steels to do some strange stuff within film sets that had to fit an art director's profile but be up to spec for us. And certainly Swedish steels, SSAB, we used them a lot because the metallurgy is a science in itself. I would never go and design a steel, but I'd just find someone that's designed the steel and use it. And there's a real power to that.
Get the data sheet, provide the data sheet to the...
and then go and get it once it's in the
expert tradespeople that can do it.
So I wouldn't be put off by that. I know you want to do a lot in your own space, and as does anyone, which is really admirable. But
there's there's sort of, I guess, going back to sort of like, one of the sort of the failings, like you don't have to do everything. Like there's maybe a not so helpful idea around kind of imbuing your full kind of creative, or only your hands have touched it, sort of thing into that.
It's a control of it.
There
is a sense of control. It's hard to give that up, but
and there's also merit in that. There is also merit in that for very, very high. Like I see a lot of jewelers do that, and for very high value pieces, that makes sense. But ultimately, it needs to be commercial as well. It needs to be able to pay the bills because you've decided to go full time, right?
Yeah.
Which is a balance that everyone, I think, needs to strike for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell me, with all the strings to your bow at the moment, if there was a piece that lasted in 100 years, that was stood here in 100 years, that people looked at and was like, that is Eli's, what would it be? It doesn't have to be a piece you've created. It could be a piece you plan to create. It could be, what would that piece be?
I think it's going to be a lamp.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's going to be a lamp. Yeah. So that's going to be something that incorporates a really sort of different approach of contour, surface and arrangement, but also sort of the mechanical pivots. So I imagine it being sort of an articulated sort of endeavour.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does that tick a lot of the boxes for you with the sort of engineering side of it as well as the artistic side of it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that's kind of been like a much of an over horizon kind of thing that still keeps coming up, that still keeps appearing in the sketchbook. Because like as soon as something comes up, it goes in the sketchbook. It's sort of like part of the process. But like I feel like that's going to really stand out, and it's going to be a really long development to kind of bring that about and incorporate all the different sort of machines and processes and techniques. And and there's also like I'm not there yet. Like I sort of feel like the prototyping will be done by me, but probably a lot of if there's machined components, like that'll be definitely be outsourced. Yeah, because like I've only got like a tiny little lathe, and a tiny little machine, little milling machine, which is it's like good for really small kind of production. But
is there anything stopping you make prototype one now?
No, not really. Not really. No, like it's sort of like I think. The process I'm using at the moment is moving from the sketchbook to models, and from the models to prototype to production. And because like the sketch or the vision is one thing, but then the model, like especially if it's a scale model, that's sort of like it's there. You kind of play with it in your hands instead of playing with it in your mind, and sort of see how it kind of moves, how it interacts. And I feel like that's something that can't be rushed, to kind of get the best outcome. There's sort of like there's a bit of a push and pull between working through things that have to be done now, and working through things to get sort of the best outcome, and letting things kind of sit on the back burner and stuff like that. And the fear of that is that you leave it on the back burner forever, and you never quite get to it, but it's it doesn't have to be shown either, like it's sort of, like most of my mistakes, they go in the fire, So I think it's like, people don't need to know about them. I know about them, and it's very important for me to know about them.
Yeah.
That's fair.
And to know where to go with it. But
the world doesn't need to know about it.
they're not interested either, to some degree.
Maybe.
I think other makers are definitely interested in it.
Yeah, they would be.
Other makers are definitely interested in it, and there's a lot of worth, I think, and again, certainly in my previous practice, there's a lot of worth in embodying
sort of
those
doing
mistakes.
those sort of
and
lessons learnt.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the airline industry has a fantastic cross-pollination of mistakes.
Yeah.
Where any issue that happens, and this is my understanding, and I've read the paper on it, and I've kind of kept up to date with it because we tried to implement it into film and special effects.
Yeah, right.
It's like any accident that happens, any mishap that happens, anything that happens anywhere is across the board for all, like it's public.
Yeah.
Within the airline industry, it's public, so that it doesn't happen a second time because the stakes are so high.
Absolutely.
What would it look like if you skipped out the scale model and went straight to full scale?
I don't feel drawn to doing that. I sort of feel like it's quicker to develop from models and from iterations in models before moving straight to the prototype. I think if for spoons, it's sort of like I do like a direct carving, direct kind of synthesis of design. And like you can sort of do that, or I do that, depending on what it is, But if it's sort of like a bigger sort of thing with multi sort of components that all need to kind of come together, sort of thing, then like I don't think I would do that. It's sort of, I feel like doing the models is sort of like a really kind of quick way. I mean, you can make a model in about half an hour. Whereas, sort of if you're working on like a prototype of some kind, then it might take all day and then also consume a bit of material as well. So, like it depends what it is. Depends what it is. If it's something I've never made before, then like I don't think I would go for a direct synthesis kind of thing of like kind of just running at it and doing that.
Interesting question.
Yeah.
Just it looks different for everybody. Like for me, whenever we built something, I've never made a scale model of it.
Yeah, right.
But I've always done a really articulated CAD model of it.
Yep.
Because for me, that might take a day.
Yep.
And I could work something out that's going to take 10 weeks to build, Yep. So it's just different skill sets. So I'm always interested in people's...
I sort of feel like that's a bit of an analogous to like making the CAD model, kind of like playing around with it, moving,
You're just doing
adjusting.
a physical version of it.
Yeah, it's just sort of like a physical sort of version. Yeah. So, like I'd like to incorporate a bit of CAD as well at some point. And also, that makes it a bit easier to kind of, handball kind of work, to other people as well, because it's in a format they can consume.
They can pick
which
it
is
up.
kind of where you start, why you start, with CAD,
Well, that's exactly it. I explain it as it's a communication tool.
Yeah.
CAD is just a communication tool.
Absolutely.
It is a really, really complex email inbox.
Yeah.
Or outbox, whichever way you want to look at it. Right? That's all it is.
It's the same with the models. Absolutely.
That's it. Yeah.
Those sorts of
So you think there'd be a lamp, and that would be a multi-material, multi-medium kind of thing?
Yeah. Yeah, it would. But it's still, I feel like I'm drawn to keeping in the homewares kind of everyday kind of usage.
Yeah.
Kind of stuff.
That's your sort of, that's your vertical.
That's sort of where most of my work, where most of my energy's sort of going to go, I sort of feel.
And presumably where most of your customers are now.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
It may seem a far stretch from spoon to lamp, but actually it's still a homeware piece in someone's home.
Yep.
You could, it's like we talked about at the start, you know, what's the 30, 40 pound product, the 100, 200 pound product, a couple of £1,000 product.
Yeah, yeah.
It's, okay.
Where does it all fit together, you know?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Kate?
Yeah, what advice would you give your younger self?
My younger self.
Yeah, that's what most people
Yeah.
wouldn't listen.
It's, you know, what's the saying, you know, like wisdom comes too late, you know, sort of thing. Yeah. But I think for my younger self, I think the best piece of advice would be to sort of learn from other people's mistakes, to actually listen to people when they're sort of talking to you. Because, like, I think the fact that anyone's willing, you know, to communicate or willing to take their time, then there's something in that, you know. And I think in the past, like, I was a bit, you know, sort of didn't really take it on board, whether that's, you know, constructive stuff or whether it's, you know, criticism, you know, like people saying they sort of like stuff and you're kind of like, you only see their faults in something, or people saying you have criticism and it's like, how dare you, you know, sort of thing. So I sort of feel like, you know, that's something, you know, like everyone's here to help each other. Yeah.
You'd like to think so anyway.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's sort of, if you're paying attention, you're listening to something, you'll be able to work it out. If they're there to help you or not. So,
True.
So I think that advice still stands.
Yeah, like it. Brilliant. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks for coming.
We'll wrap it up. Thanks for showing us around Ashmore. We obviously got to speak to Shelley yesterday and Dave yesterday. Bit of morning tea with some of the other guys before shipping off. It's been a worthwhile stop. Thank you so much. And thanks for your hospitality last night.
You're welcome.
It doesn't go amiss on us. It's very, very kind of you.
Welcome. It's nice to have you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, mate. We'll wrap it at that.
Nice.
Too easy.